Well, rather than being born into this system, I sort of stumbled into this area, quite by accident, really. I was fortunate enough that just after being called to the bar, I had an opportunity in international law that many people don't have. My reason for going to Bosnia, I went to Bosnia at the end of 2001, was really just to go and meet my in-laws for the first time, my wife coming from Bosnia, so that was my intention. So I went to Bosnia to meet my in-laws and was actually introduced to a human rights court there that was my introduction to international law. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible because I will be speaking again about extradition this afternoon, and much of what I'll be speaking about this afternoon sort of carries on from what I was doing in Bosnia. So if I could just open this up. Okay. This is just very, very quickly what I would like to talk about, the different aspects of my work from Bosnia until the present. I was seconded by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to go to Bosnia to work in a human rights court, which was established at the end of the armed conflict in 1995-1996. And my role was to advise a court of 14 judges, national and international judges, on human rights, international standards, and international agreements. I was just about to leave after a period of 18 months with the Human Rights Chamber when the ICTY's completion strategy started, which showed a need to start a domestic war crimes court in Bosnia. The reason for that being the massive cases that the ICTY was simply never ever going to touch upon. When I was asked to join the War Crimes Court, we were looking at approximately 15,000 cases that had to be dealt with. This is 15,000 individual perpetrators of war crimes. The challenge that I had was creating a national court with international assistance from the very beginning, and it was a truly exceptional opportunity. My role was to assist in drafting the laws. The Bosnian statute was a purely domestic law that imported international law into its domestic legal system, and the statute was based primarily on the ICC statute. Now, these are areas that were completely unknown to the Bosnian legal system. Stephen spoke about joint criminal enterprise. That, for example, was not a concept understood in Bosnia. Crimes against humanity was another concept which was not in the domestic legal system prior to the creation of the War Crimes Court. My first role was to set it up, and there are 15 lawyers recruited to set up the court, to build the court, to build a prison, and basically to get the thing moving. I was also required to liaise with the ICTY on the transfer of knowledge and the transfer of cases. Once the court was actually started, I was appointed as the head of the defence office. The difficulty that we had was it's all well and good getting funding for the prosecution, for the court, and for a prison, but nobody actually wants to pay to defend these cases. So my first job was to go out and actually get money to set it up. Nobody wanted to pay. In the end, we had the Soros Foundation that gave a grant of €3 million that was supposed to last for a 6-year mandate, even though the court and prosecution had 450 million. That was the way it was worked out. We were also told that we were not going to be allowed to have international counsel appearing, even though the judges were international and the prosecutors were international. It was considered to be slightly unfair if there were foreign counsel representing the people that we really needed to convict. So these are the things that I was faced with at the outset, which caused many problems. I ran the defence office for approximately 12 months, and then I was recruited by the prosecutor's office to head the war crimes unit in the prosecutor's office. And so that's what I did for the following 4 years. As part of that, one of the things that we had to address was the massive backlog of cases. We were operating on approximately 5% of the annual budget of the ICTY, but our role was to complete 15,000 cases over a 10-year period, as opposed to the ICTY doing less than 100 cases. So in order to do that, we had to develop a strategy for dealing with war crimes. Now, this wasn't something that the public particularly wanted to hear. What they wanted to hear is that every single person accused of war crimes would actually be prosecuted and brought before the courts. Well, 15,000 cases over a 10-year period, when each case lasts an average of 12 months, was simply impossible. So we had to separate the cases that we thought should be prosecuted from those cases that should be dealt with through other means. We had to develop a reconciliation process. For those people that have experience of Bosnia, reconciliation is probably the single most difficult thing to do, because all the victims' associations are quite happy for reconciliation to occur once every criminal has been prosecuted and sent to prison. Then reconciliation can start. So those were the challenges that we had. From the prosecutor's office, I then left at the end of 2007 and joined the European Union police mission for a period of 6 months to work on organised crime cases. My role at that point was to work on cases that had an international element. They were requests of extradition from foreign states. These were major transnational organised crime groups that focused in the Balkans. My role was to coordinate a unit that investigated and prosecuted these cases for a period of 6 months before I then came back to the bar and joined 9 Bedford Row. Since I've been at 9 Bedford Row, my practice is predominantly extradition work, but I do have a number of other types of international cases. For example, with one of our colleagues in the audience, I'm now working on a Ghanaian case where it's an individual who was convicted in Ghana in circumstances that would never arise in this country, one would hope. And so we now have to argue for the High Court that his transfer of sentence should be revoked on the basis that he didn't have a fair trial in Ghana. The other major international case I'm working on now is the Kay and Karadzic case. Radovan Karadzic, who's standing trial in The Hague. I'm instructed by a US law firm to represent the 350 families of genocide who sued Karadzic in the US in the year 2000 and had a judgment of $750 million awarded, but has no ability to seize his assets and take effect of that judgment. My job currently is through the Bosnian courts, first of all to have that judgment ratified, recognised, and then to have his assets seized. That will obviously have an impact on the case of the ICTY, and that's why the two proceedings are being worked in tandem. So that in a nutshell is what I do and how I got to where I am now. And I will talk this afternoon about extradition, and I'll talk more in detail about some of the cases that I dealt with in Bosnia that have an international element that then leads into the extradition. Thank you.